welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and your other host this week is from Lazy Gaming Guys, from Ronin Console. It's Scott. Welcome back, Scott.
Thanks. Always glad to be here.
And you'll have to excuse me because I am battling a cold, so I sound a little bit different than last week. But if this is your very first show, I sound the same. I sound new. I sound whatever to you. The way we format it is we go through this week's news, and then we end it with the Brocat Block, which is what Scott and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 561. So the Super Mario Bros. Movie has been posted in its entirety on Twitter by various users taking advantage of the platform's kind of lack of content moderation. They've been pretty good about getting rid of, let's say, pedal gun type of content out of there. So they've been good with that. But when it comes to copyrighted content, it's been a little bit slower. So verified Twitter accounts have posted the movie, and although some have been suspended, the original tweets and retweets still circulate, and new accounts keep posting the film. Other movies, such as Avatar: The Way of Water, have also been tweeted in full recently. It's unclear what Nintendo intends to do to prevent the film from showing up online, and Twitter has not responded to requests for comment. I've seen from Nintendo groups that I'm in on Facebook, some are saying, well, this isn't going to phase them anyway because they're already at over 1 billion. Others are saying that Nintendo's going to bring down the hammer on them, or Illumination is. What do you think of this leak? And it's happened with other movies. Even Rush Hour was up, and I remember I shared that on the Discord even.
Yeah, I think it's just the way of Twitter now, because to your point, they're very slow on a lot of copyrighted stuff, like taking it down, if at all. I mean, some of those are probably still around for like Fast and Furious or Rush Hour or some of those other movies that are a little older. This one, I'm sure they've been somewhat taking it down, just not in any way that's going to really make a difference. But it's such a weird thing that this keeps happening, and it's to multiple movies. So, it's one of those. I don't think Disney did anything with Avatar: The Way of Water showing up on there, other than, having Twitter try and suspend the people or reporting them. So I'm pretty sure that's all Nintendo's going to do at best as well.
I think Twitter would need to get some kind of algorithm or whatever they use on YouTube where before you even upload something, it'll tell you, hey, this is copyrighted. We're not going to upload this, because it already knows and compares your video, the sound, the video, all that stuff. It compares it to a trailer, to a movie, and that's something that Twitter's going to need, but that's going to take a shit ton of money, a lot more employees. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be a quick fix probably in the next year or two. I don't think we're going to see it.
No, I don't think so either. With the way Elon's running it, he doesn't want to hire more people. So I don't think you're going to see something like that even pop up. I feel like unless this really starts having a negative effect for sponsors or something, he's not even going to care enough to actually do anything. It's more of just, I guess we should start deleting some of those.
Yeah, he's definitely got bigger problems.
But unless there's like really big things like Nintendo goes, okay, well, we're just going to, completely remove ourselves from Twitter. That would be the only thing that would get him to be like, okay, you know what? Maybe we'll be a little harsher about some of this copyright stuff. Or if like a group of people or companies that have all had their movies leaked while in theaters on Twitter go, yeah, we're all going to just, unless you do something about this, remove our promotions from Twitter. But I don't see any of them doing that currently.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
I think the only thing, that would be the only thing I would see that would get him to be like, okay, we need an algorithm in place.
Yeah, Twitter's too valuable right now. I know a lot of like authors and artists and shit, they'll threaten to leave, and they've threatened to leave before, like when Trump got his account redone. It's like, I'm leaving, and then they didn't. It's because Twitter's too valuable of a platform. It's a spot where a bunch of followers are already there, or for Nintendo's sake, a lot of customers are already on there. So it's like, this sucks, but the benefit of promoting our stuff through every single tweet hundreds of thousands of times a year. I mean, that kind of reach for basically free is you can't really beat that. So I don't really see anything happening. And it's a tough thing to crack. Again, I don't think there's a good solution for this. And for now, it's just a matter of reporting it when you see it, if you care enough. Do you actually think, though, that any of this is going to affect the sales of the movie? As in, oh, well, I saw it on Twitter, I'm not going to go see it in theaters. Were those people not going to pay a ticket anyway?
I think that the average amount that see it on Twitter and go, you know what, now I'm not going to go see it in theaters would be at such a small number.
Yeah.
Like out of 100, you're talking maybe 1 or 2 people would be a lost sale. I can't imagine it's higher than that.
Yeah,
unless you have some like hard facts from a company. Like they always estimate it at higher numbers, but it's like most of those people, especially by this point in the movie's lifespan, if they haven't seen it, they don't care to go see it in theaters. Exactly. With me, I'll wait until it's on a streaming service or something, or maybe I can rent it from, Vudu or something and watch it that way. I'm not going to go out to the theaters and watch it. So even if I saw it on Twitter, you're still not getting my sale one way or another.
Well, there's more leaks that have hit Nintendo as well, as The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, or as we were saying off air, Tears of the Kingdom, we don't know yet, has been leaked over a week ahead of its official release date. Physical copies were sold early, and the game was pirated and shared online, with players trying to avoid spoilers or seeking out leaked footage to learn more about the highly anticipated game. Nintendo has previously taken legal action against individuals involving leaks and piracy, including subpoenaing Discord. There's a bunch of Discords that popped up just for this game for personal information and pursuing a hacker involved in the piracy of this. This leak has had similar incidents in the past with Zelda games, Pokemon games. One of the main servers for Tears of the Kingdom leaked has already been shut down. But this is one that this tends to happen, though, with every major release. Until you eliminate physical releases, there's always going to be a retailer somewhere out there that either doesn't care or just sells it on accident, and you get that to the wrong person, and they're going to immediately stream it.
Yeah, and sometimes, even if it's digital, like if it's up for like pre-order, it can happen that way too. People can
really?
Get into it. I've seen that with a few things. That's why certain companies won't put it up for pre-order at all.
Interesting.
On digital, and it'll just show up the day that it releases, so that there's no code of it on the website at all. And people have even been able to get in through the demos into the full games, depending on how the demo is and stuff like that.
That's crazy.
So it's like there's no good way fully against it, but this one is one that Nintendo has a lot more control over than Super Mario Brothers movie thing.
Well, I'll ask you the same question here. Obviously, I don't think this will impact a lot of sales. I mean, sure, they'll pirate it. It'll go up. People that were going to pirate it are going to pirate it anyway. I think in this case, it's more of the player experience. Like if at the end there is a big twist of Ganon was Zelda the whole time or something like that, that could affect the player's experience. That might be more of what they're concerned with rather than the sales, I think.
I mean, yeah, I think that there's the impact from this one, I think, is more of the fact of, to your point, not necessarily the people that are playing it, that are pirating it. It's the people that get spoiled and go, well, now I'm not going to play it. Now I'm not going to go buy it. Those are missed sales from it. But it's a very different, like the people pirating it probably wouldn't have bought the game anyway.
Has that ever happened to you where like a game you were really excited for, something gets spoiled in it and then it makes you not want to buy the game? Or would you go ahead and buy it anyway, but kind of be upset about it?
I've never had it happen because with games, I never run into spoilers.
You're on it quick too.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things that, I don't know, I've never had that particular instance happen, but I would probably still buy the game just because it's like, yeah, it does suck that this got spoiled, but the gameplay still would be something interesting to look forward to, and actually playing the game and seeing the spoiler in context and things like that. Like, yeah, it would suck and it would detract from the experience, but it wouldn't completely ruin the experience to the point where I'm like, well, I'm not going to buy the game now.
Well, what an era we live in, because back in the day, you'd have to go to Barnes & Noble and scream out the spoilers to Harry Potter. Yeah. Now you can download the entire fucking book or the entire fucking game. Like, it's already out there for you. People will pirate it, they'll throw it up there, and people can download it right away. So lots of people playing Tears of the Kingdom right now. But for those of you, like you were saying, things in my end, I don't really care enough about certain games, even ones that like Smash Brothers, where it's like, oh my god, the whole roster is up. That's fine. I don't care. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna unlock the characters, or I'm gonna play the story. I've had Ocarina of Time back when that came out. My buddy showed me the last level where you fight Ganon and Ganondorf and the whole ending. And I was like, oh my God, this game is amazing. This is epic. I need this. So I went out and I want to say I eventually purchased it, or I forgot how, maybe it was a birthday gift. And that got me to play it. So on my end, sometimes spoilers work where it'll sell the game for the companies, which is kind of weird how sometimes it kind of balances itself out.
Yeah. And I think with something like Legend of Zelda, that'll balance that a lot more because to your point, like there's going to be some moments where it's like, oh, that's just really cool, and there's still a very strong gameplay aspect versus something like a visual novel or something like that, where it's like, well, yeah, you're playing it for the plot. There is no other thing. So if the whole plot gets spoiled, you're a lot less likely to actually buy the game. Whereas this, I mean, there's like, a whole 20, 30-hour game to play, and you just got spoiled on one little portion of it.
Well, maybe one day Tears of the Kingdom will hit the World Video Game Hall of Fame, which for this year, it's located at the Strong National Museum of Play. They've announced the induction of 4 new video games. So these 4 are The Last of Us, Wii Sports, Barbie Fashion Designer, and Computer Space. These games represent different genres and eras of the industry, and their impact has been recognized by the World Video Game Hall of Fame. So this allows visitors to nominate games for entry, but final decisions are made by a group of quote-unquote experts familiar with the history of video games and their impact on society. So some people were scoffing like, oh, Barbie, or what the hell is Computer Space? So those 2 were nominated for Barbie Fashion Designer was one of the earliest games, and I don't even know if you can say this in 2023, but they did, of games aimed at girls. So it was a game that carved the path for that genre. And that's great. Computer Space itself was considered one of the first commercial video games. So that's why that was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And then I'm assuming Wii Sports, I think it is still the best-selling game, considering it was bundled with the system. And then The Last of Us is more of this is a quality title. It's got an impact. It's got its own show. So I don't disagree with any of these personally.
Yeah, I mean, the only one I was kind of looking at was the Barbie Fashion Designer. Like, I was kind of like, really? But, I mean, I guess if it was one of the first aimed at, like, a female audience, but at the same time, I would figure more the first one would be more important than one of the first. And then Wii Sports makes a lot of sense. It is, I think, still the best-selling in-game.
I mean, that shit was a revolution. Let's talk a little bit about that, because some of the younger broquettes didn't even exist back when the Wii Sports came out. It doesn't seem like that long ago, but it really was. I mean, everyone was talking about Wii Sports. This was a time in which now adults aren't really into games. They don't talk about it like they did back then, but Wii Sports was a game that they would get into. It was easy for them to pick up and play. And I would sell that game when I used to work at GameStop, which is where I met Scott. I would sell the Wii to adults that would just want to play Wii Sports. I mean, that's how big of an impact that thing was.
Oh, yeah. No, like, I mean, even nowadays, like a lot of older people know Wii Sports. A lot of people at my work that don't really play games are like, oh, there's Switch Sports. It's like Wii Sports, so they want to play it and things like that just because it reminds them of Wii Sports. So it's one of those things that people still remember that game to this day. It was easily accessible, and it got a lot of families playing together, which was really cool.
Before we move on to some Pokemon news, what game would you put into the Hall of Fame, and why is it Kingdom of Hearts and or Persona?
Depending on if it actually is already in there, I would actually say Pokemon.
Oh, no shit. Over Kingdom of Hearts or Persona?
I would, because I think Pokemon has way more cultural impact and stuff and significance.
Okay, so you're going with overall significance rather than like what you would personally want to see in there.
I mean, I also still personally just love Pokemon hugely. it's one of those things of like, if I'm going to look at some of the ones that I love, then yeah, I'm going to be like, well, this one does have the best chance and has the best reason to be there. I would be shocked though if Pokemon wasn't already in the Hall of Fame,
Yeah, like Pokemon
just
Yellow
because
or Red and Blue.
it is known in the general zeitgeist. Almost everyone knows what a Pikachu is.
Oh, for sure. On my end, I'd go with
You
Resident
know?
Evil 4. Like, yes, it's my favorite video game of all time, but I do think it created a genre. I mean, the whole over-the-shoulder look, it spawned games like Dead Space, which is also excellent. And I think it did have a cultural impact as well. I mean, obviously a bunch of movies spawned out of it. Yeah, they're animated, but I mean, it's still
Yeah,
going to the point where there's
and
even a remake now.
yeah, I mean that created things like even something like Gears of War wouldn't have existed
That's
without
true.
Resident Evil 4. A lot of games took inspiration from Resident Evil 4. I mean, hell, even current Resident Evil with all of the remakes took inspiration from Resident Evil 4. They all wanted to play like 4.
Yeah, not all
So
of them
yeah,
succeeded, but
like
yeah, I mean,
no,
it's
but
a tough
they
bar to
all
reach.
want that was the goal. So it's very interesting that yeah, that game is very culturally significant.
Well, here's one you brought up on our Discord. It's about a Japanese card shop. Haruyura 2 in Akidabara has gained widespread attention for banning adult sales of two of the new Pokemon card collections, Snow Hazard and Clay Burst, in order to prevent reselling and make the cards more accessible to children. So the shop has implemented strict policies, including ID checks and the limit of 10 booster packs per day for buyers who actually qualify. With Pokemon cards in high demand, especially in Japan where they sell out very quickly, it can be difficult for new collectors and children to get them. Haruya's 2's decision has sparked interest globally, and other stores may follow suit if it proves successful. At my time at the shop, I was managing the card shop or the comic shop during COVID, and that was a time in which, yeah, the Poke Bros like spawned. They became a thing, and it was all thanks to YouTubers, right? And they came into the shop, and I noticed, like, I'm like, you guys aren't my regulars. You're nothing like my customers that buy Pokemon. And when we saw that this was a real issue because my regular Pokemon players weren't able to get cards, we implemented a rule like this. Now, we didn't go as far as going like, no, you can't, only kids, because we know there'd be a way around it. So we would tell them you can only buy 2 packs per day. And it's like, oh, what if I come back later? Well, I'm going to be here later and I'm going to tell you no. So, so
Like
it
I'm
would
here
work though.
all day.
I'm here open to close. It's COVID, man. Our employees are still furloughed.
Yeah,
We would make a box last sometimes 2 days, which was huge back then. A booster box, like, oh
Yeah.
shit, it took us 2 days. Whereas normally this one asshole would come in and want all of them. Even when we marked up the prices, I remember at one point we had them up at $7.99 a booster pack, and we were still selling out. People were not hesitating. They're like, yeah, give me whatever the limit is. And I told the manager the owner at the time, I'm like, we need to put these at $10. And he's like, no, I don't want to get any negative pushback or reviews. And I'm like, they're already at $8. We're already going to get bad reviews for anyone that complains. Make them 10. Like, let's make a profit on these. We never did. We left them at, I think, $7.99 or $7. But man, that profit margin was nice during COVID. But yeah, for shops to be doing this, I mean, this is kind of the move to go. It'll make your product last longer. I know there's that argument that Bobby and I have touched on of why does it matter? You're still going to make the same amount of money. Well, it does matter because you're serving your customers or a wider base of customers that are then going to want to come back, as opposed to selling it to one guy who's going to throw it up on eBay and disappointing 9 other kids.
It's also a matter of like, you know, those kids you're hoping are also going to be long-term customers versus these guys are just looking for whatever profit they can make. And the moment they can't, you're going to be stuck on the hook with a bunch of product. And now those kids are older and they're going to go, well, I don't want it because I couldn't get it back then. So I got into this other card game. So I'm buying that and not Pokemon. Like, you don't want to start alienating certain parts of the fan base in order to to cater to other parts.
Heaven forbid it's fucking Yu-Gi-Oh that they get into. It's like, no, cut down on the Yu-Gi-Oh. Get them into Pokemon.
It's worth noting as well that it's only for the newest sets.
Gotcha.
And that's probably what they're going to do going forward, I'm sure, too, is like, I bet when the next set comes out, Snow Hazard Clay Burst will probably be available to adults again.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next set won't be. or maybe they'll do 2 sets at a time, whatever the newest 2 sets. But I'm willing to bet that that's how they're going to rotate this. Is that, yeah, it's the ones where there is going to be extremely high demand. Everyone wants the new set,
It's pretty
especially
interesting that
speculators. They want to flip those right away.
they do, and this has all gone on longer than I expected it. I mean, did you think that the drought, it's gotten better, right? When we go to Target, we'll see product as opposed to like just nothing, but it's still pretty high in demand. I mean, that we've had it where you and I go to the card section, you pick up a box of whatever, we come back to the section less than an hour later, and the shit is cleared out. So, I mean, did it surprise you that it still lasted this long as far as like the flippers, the speculators, the collectors, that it's still kind of a problem to catch up on the demand?
I'm still surprised that we're having this big of an issue, and that, how should I put this? That not only is product getting, still very hard to find, but that it's still the prices that it is. If you can't find it at Target or Walmart, the secondhand prices still haven't really evened out yet.
Mm-hmm.
They're still way above what they used to be. I mean, I can mention about the Japanese Pokemon booster boxes because I used to buy them. They were $30 a booster box.
Right, I remember.
Now, Japanese booster boxes are smaller than US booster boxes, but they also have smaller set numbers because in Japan, or the English ones will combine like 2 or 3 booster sets and then put it out in English. But at the same time, now those same booster boxes went from $30 to about $70 to $80. And if the set's more in demand, like the Japanese Crown Zenith is, that's $112 for a booster box because they have booster boxes and we don't of Crown Zenith. In the US, you can buy an ETB of Crown Zenith for $50 if you're not talking secondhand store or secondhand retail, which thankfully, at least Crown Zenith, I've been able to find quite a bit of the ETBs and even the 3 legendary bird tins.
Yeah, that's true. Like, good. I've had the opportunity as well. Like, I was with you and I'm like, if I wanted them, I could have gotten them. I ended up getting some singles from those tin birds because that ended up being the route I went with because money's been tight, but it hasn't been as bad still as COVID, but it's still pretty difficult.
It's very interesting, but I am curious to see how many people are out there trying to get kids to buy them Pokemon cards.
Well, if for some reason you can't get any cards, you could always go digital. The Pokemon trading card company Live app is officially launching next month on the 8th for iOS, Android, macOS, and Windows devices following a 6-month open beta phase. So this new app will replace the existing Pokemon TCG online service, which was shut down on June 5th. Pokemon trading card game Live includes cards from Black and White onwards and offers various gameplay modes including ranked and casual play, just like the old app. Players who log in before the official launch will receive special customization options, so it's an incentive to get a large player base in on the app. The app's launch coincides with the release of the Scarlet and Violet Paldea Evolved expansion. So starting with that set, right away you can put in all those new cards, all of those new codes into the app. So I used to play a lot of TCG online. I used to actually even stream it on our YouTube channel. And from this new app that I've seen, the format is nicer. I'm hoping that it runs smoother, but obviously it'll have some growing pains just like most online games.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm hoping to see more content of it, to be honest, on a lot of YouTubers. Because that was one thing that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has had a leg up on with Pokemon, is that a lot of content creators for Yu-Gi-Oh! Will stream the Master Duel and stream online matches and things like that. And it's a lot cooler to watch an actual interface and things happening instead of either some dude trying to record his locals for Pokemon, with a cell phone camera.
Yep.
Or just being like, oh yeah, this is what happened and recapping. It's like, no, I want to see like an actual match, So it'll be kind of cool with this. I'm hoping that a lot of Pokemon YouTubers that are actually serious about it, about playing and not just, speculating, will start streaming some of this stuff. And that way I can watch more Pokemon trading card game and watch them be like, oh, I'm practicing for Worlds, and kind of see what the competitive zeitgeist looks like a lot more than only being able to watch really the actual regionals and nationals and stuff on Pokemon's YouTube channel. Because so far, that's all I've really got.
Well, it's
So
always
I'm looking forward to a lot of content that comes from this, hopefully.
it's always a great way to get kids and new players into the game too, because I know I'd always recommend, they'd always be like, hey, I want to get into Pokemon, or my kid wants to get into Pokemon. What's the best way to learn? It's like, yeah, you can come in during Pokemon League and we can show you. But if you want to practice in the meantime at home, download this app, and it won't let you do things like illegal moves. So it'll walk you through what you can do. Click on the card. It'll highlight the field for you. And that's really the best way to learn, is to jump right in, play some beginning matches against the computer. And that's how Leo learned. He learned on the app a little bit, and then he's like, oh, I want to do the physical thing, because we went to Cool Stuff and he saw players playing. And he's like, can we do that? It's like, sure. Went home, I busted out my Gengar deck and Chandelure deck and all that, and I showed him, and he picked it up pretty quickly because of the app. And getting his hands on the physical cards also helped him learn the game even faster. So it's good that they're doing the app. I'm glad that they're not just doing away with the digital game at all.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it looks like adding a dust type system, because it kind of sucked that it was just based on whatever you pulled.
Right.
Instead of like, okay, well, I have a bunch of extras. I can craft a card that I might need to try out this deck or something like that.
Yeah, you used to have to
kind of
rely on the
helps out a
trade
lot.
system.
Yeah, which that relied on strangers being decent with their trades and requests.
Well, here's something that's going to affect our media for the next at least year, it sounds like. On May 2nd of this year, the Writers Guild of America went on strike after contract negotiations with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers broke down with no agreement in place. The strike is over payment restructuring and fair compensation for streaming services. So late night talk shows, including The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, have shut down immediately. The strike could last for more than a year, affecting future TV and movie productions. So this impact, you and I may remember, again, younger Brokettes may not, but back in 2007 and 2008, the Writers Guild of America strike had a pretty big impact on shows like Breaking Bad, Heroes, Lost, and The Office. Some shows saw an increase in number of episodes, while others were completely delayed or had delayed seasons, ended up with seasons regarded by fans as some of their worst. Good or bad, there is a huge effect that's going to happen with these as well. The strike that happened last time ended up lasting until February 12th, 2008. So this goes across the board. I saw it on Twitter with some of the Simpsons writers were talking about it. I don't know if it's going to, it's got to affect even the comic world, because some of that is tied into the films that get made. So if you're an indie publisher and you're relying on, hold on a second, that Berserker show or movie starring Keanu Reeves, like that's on pause now, that affects our plans, because we planned on launching this book, let's say book 2, by the time the show released. So now you got to delay your book as well, move things around. That's money you're not going to earn now when you expect it to. It's bigger than people think.
Yeah, to your point with the comics as well, I can definitely see that having an immediate effect on that. As far as behind the scenes, we probably wouldn't know some of the stuff because maybe some things weren't announced yet, that were supposed to coincide with some of the stuff and now are being delayed. But for a lot of those artists or editors and writers for those, that's suddenly a delay in pay, because now they were going to be working on this project. Now they're not. Now they don't know if they will be. And you have things like, for example, that Cowboy Bebop live action series had a comic adaptation as well.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been delayed if the series had been, or to your point, Berserker. It's very, this will definitely have far-reaching consequences, some of which we will know immediately, some of which we might never know, and some of which we'll probably see down the line. But I'm very curious to see to what extent and how long this lasts, because it could be a very short strike. You never know. It depends on how much is affected pretty much immediately.
Well, people keep saying, right, Chat GPT is going to write up episodes instead. They're like, yeah, let's just use that. Fuck the writers.
Yeah, and I'm curious how that'll go for them.
South Park did it. Did you see that episode?
No.
Yeah, they had Chat GPT write the ending of the episode. Like they wrote all the way to the almost to the end, and they're like, I think it was Kyle who's like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. I know, ChatGPT, because that was the whole thing. That was the whole plot of the show,
Right.
is that everyone kept using it to like communicate with people. So sure enough, the whole episode ends and it's written by Chat, and you can tell. But it's funny because the South Park actors, they play out their lines like as if they're reading it, which is really funny. So it's just kind of like, yeah, I guess that's what would happen sort of in a South Park episode. But it's also like, I don't know. You can tell when it's written by an AI when you compare it like that, because it just doesn't move as naturally. Characters start doing things that aren't quite within what they normally do. So, I mean, maybe for plots, they'll be able to use some of that, but I don't think it's going to be an answer for the long term.
No, I don't think it's going to replace actual writers.
So I wanted to cover real quick the Ben Affleck film, just a heads up to anyone, because I know we have a lot of Batfleck broquettes. His highly praised film, Air, which chronicles Nike's partnership with basketball legend Michael Jordan, will be available for streaming on Amazon Prime Video beginning May 12th. Fire TV customers will also get an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at the making of the film starting on, it's actually out now. So if you're a Fire TV customer, you have access to that. If you have Amazon Prime, I do highly recommend checking out Air. It's awesome. It was a very good movie, and Ben Affleck deserves your support. I'm waiting for the Blu-ray to be released. Hopefully it does, because it is one I want to own. But otherwise, I do have access to Prime from my parents in case I want to check it out again. So just wanted to give Mr. Ben Affleck a little bit of just watch his movie. Air is awesome. Don't just, not just the DC stuff. Watch, he directed it, he wrote it, starred in it. It's good stuff. But we do have from here on forward DC news, including the Full Circle event. But this one is all over Twitter and Instagram and still making its rounds. Jim Lee, the publisher and chief creative officer of DC, has been named as the new president of the company, according to an announcement by Warner Brothers Discovery. So Lee first rose to prominence and fame at Marvel in the late 1980s before co-founding Image Comics and later selling Wildstorm Productions to DC in 1998. Lee has since served as the editorial director of the Wildstorm imprint, co-publisher of DC, and chief creative officer. So his new position marks the first time the company has had a president since 2018, which is actually when we had him on the show. Dan DiDio left the company or got let go. So Jim Lee is now the man in charge. I hope it's a good move. Like, I know a lot of the Snyderverse fan base is happy about this because he's a friend of Zach's. He helped them do a lot of work for the storyboarding for the sequels. He just helped with the charity event to design the t-shirt. But for me as a comic reader, I just hope that he's able to shape out the comics to have a vision. I think it's a good thing that they now have a president. They haven't had one since 2018. I think the comics have dipped in quality since then because they don't have a guy like DiDio in there. And I hope Jim Lee is that vision for the comic books moving forward.
Hopefully he can kind of bring everything together, because right now I feel like I don't read a ton of DC. Like, I have a few different comics like Dark Knight and things like that. What is
Dark Knights of Steel?
Oh my god. Yes, thank you. I'm like, I am blanking on it, even though it's just to my left. Stuff like that, Deceased. But I feel like a lot of them are just very disjointed. And I don't feel like there's a very solid direction to a lot of these things, like there was when Danny DiDio was there. Like, there was a lot more quality. I mean, that's when I was reading Detective Comics and Batman and even Superman and Super Sons and things like that. I was really enjoying a lot of DC projects. So I'm hoping we can kind of get back to that point. We'll see what Jim Lee can do, like, now that he's actually in that position, and whether he has that kind of mentality to be able to bring that to it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I hope he's not just there to fill the position and to just continue to do what he was doing at DC. I hope that he does have like a structure, a plan, just like the deal had of like, okay, here we want to do the New 52 or we want to do 5G. So by this time this year, here's all the creative teams. You guys, here's the master plot right within these parameters. And I get that some artists and some writers didn't like that, but you do need some structure when you're writing these books. I mean, you got to have that balance between the two. And I think right now DC is all over the place. They're just kind of letting, it seems like, the writers and artists do whatever they want, at least the ones they're keeping. And that has a negative impact on it too, because like, as we were saying, The books don't have that a direction. They don't have well, I'll just pick and choose what I want, I guess, but it's going to be less books. Evidence in you and I, because I think you and I are picking up less DC than we did 5 years ago. I know I definitely am. And I think this dawn of DC thing is not going to bring readers back in, especially these books. I love Cyborg, but Cyborg has never been a hot seller. Static Shock, same thing. Blue Beetle, same thing. I mean, these are not books that are going to move the needle. So Jim Lee, whatever decisions he makes, I hope they're different than these. And just note that anytime they get someone else in there, this has happened time and time again, we're not going to see those changes until a year later. So all of this stuff has to flush out before whatever plan he wants to go with, if he has a plan, takes effect. And that's going to be a year from now. And that's a problem, of course, when like they get sucked up by a bigger company like Disney or Warner Brothers Discovery, because then the people up top want to do something different. The deal talked about this in the past. And again, that takes another year. So it's like, okay, they want us to do this now, so let's change the comics. And then a year later, they want something different. So that's a pretty big issue, but whether it's a good or a bad thing, we're going to see those results a year from now. And from here forward, we have the Full Circle event. I know, Scott, you're an outsider on this one, right? You don't really care about the Snyderverse as much. You know a lot about it only because I won't shut up about it, but
yeah, I mean, I'm happy for y'all, but it's kind of like I'm just here for it.
There were some good and bad out of it. So the Full Circle Vero event, I know weeks leading up to this, even months leading up to this, I was convinced that we would, and I said it on here several weeks, I was convinced that we were going to get an answer, yes or no, we're going to get more. Because I said, Zach wouldn't hype us up this much. I don't think, these were my words, I don't think he'd be that cruel to say, here's this big event, 3-day screening, Q&A, we're going to have guests, charity event, IMAX screening, and then not tell us if we should continue or not. And that's pretty much what happened. Now, I'm not as upset about it because there is actually some stuff that came out of it. And I know I said, like, if we don't get anything out of this, this is like it's like a lot of people are going to be like, well, that's it. Like, what's the point of if he's not going to tell us one way or the other? Well, it turns out that there was some stuff maybe behind the scenes happening. So first off, the new stuff that we learned out of this. So Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice faced challenges in obtaining a PG-13 rating despite the filmmaker's efforts to remove blood and violence. So Zack Snyder and his team had to make repeated cuts to the film to try to secure that PG-13 rating. And every time they came back and they're like, here you go, and submitted, the Motion Picture Association of America expressed concerns about the tone of the movie, stating that, quote, Batman's too mean to Superman, end quote. And Zach was like, are you even supposed to comment on that? Like, it's not even your job.
Like, all their job is just to look at, like, okay, is this content appropriate for this age demographic? Yes or no? Like, that's it. Not, oh, well, I mean, isn't Batman being a little mean to Superman here? Like,
it's so crazy. Like, they disagreed with the plot. It's like, that's not what you do.
yeah, it's like that. That's not your job. Like, you're not a test audience here. You're literally just here to say, like, can we show this amount of blood, violence, and stuff like that to children at the age of 13? Yes or no?
It's so crazy. And I know on Facebook when I shared this, people were like, it should have been rated R. It's like, the rated R version is out. It's called the Ultimate Edition. That's the one they screened. Watch it. It's got the blood. It's in there.
Yeah.
It's got the cursing.
Like,
we got it rated R.
You have the version, both versions at this point. Like, you can watch it.
Yeah, and that's the one that made the most money too. Zach revealed that it made like over 70% of the profit was that Ultimate Edition after DVD sales and Blu-ray and everything. So it kind of goes to show you that sometimes the director's cuts, man, they're for the better. And actually, we talked about it last week. Sony's doing an R-rated Kraven the Hunter. So we'll see if that pays off for him. But I applaud him for that. Another detail here from Zack Snyder is how Jared Leto's Joker killed Robin in the DCEU during the Q&A session. So he revealed and explained that the Joker knew that Batman's real vulnerability was Robin, and that he ultimately blew up or scorched the character. However, Snyder did stop short of revealing more details about the death, as he hopes to see it played out on screen one day. His words were, quote, clearly he blew him up, or it looked like he burned, scorched him. I think beyond that, I really don't want to say the actual circumstances, because I feel like it's a spoiler for maybe a thing that may never be spoiled. We should wait and see, don't you think? A little bit? End quote. He also shared that Joker knows the location of more kryptonite, which led to his team up with Batman in the Nightmare world from the Snyder Cut. So, I don't know. That to me tells me if he had no hope or if there was not something being worked on behind the scenes, then why not just spoil it? And the reason I say that is because at the first SnyderCon 2-3 years ago, he was letting out all of the details. Lois Lane gets killed by Darkseid, and she's pregnant by Batman's kid, and that kid eventually becomes the Batman of the future, and all this other stuff, right, got revealed. And at that point, I think he knew, like, there's no shot. But now that he's being real coy about it, I don't know, like, if it feels like, why not spoil it unless you feel like there's a shot here?
Could it be that they're planning to do maybe a comic adaptation? Considering that Jim Lee is now the president of DC?
And that would depend on how much Zach wants to compromise, that's for sure. Now, I know I've
but
been...
at the same time, that might be what he's implying with that is that, okay, well, I see a shot at something,
Right.
to be able to finish telling my story.
Yeah, and it could very well be that or an animated movie or a live action. We don't know. I've been very vocal on here about how me and a lot of Brocats and Snyderverse people want it to be live action. We would not want to settle for a comic or an animated movie. And we would hope that Zach wouldn't want, he'd rather be like, look, I'd rather not tell the story than tell it in a way that I don't want it said or told. And he did that with the Snyder Cut, actually, where the first time they were like, all right, Zach, you've got it half done. The visual effects aren't complete. How about we release that and we'll call it a day. You can have your cut released. And Zach's like, no, how about you give me money and we'll finish the effects? And they're like, we're not going to give you more money. And he's like, okay, well then we're not going to release it. And then that paid off because less than a year later, they're like, all right, here's $70 million.
It's one of those things of like maybe negotiations did fully either reach a point, either the point of no return of like, this is it, this is all you're getting, is we'll do a comic or an animated adaptation, or maybe they went to something else and that, okay, yeah, you are going to get your live action. I don't think currently we know which point the negotiations went, but they went to something. Clearly,
one interesting thing is he did bring up the writer's strike. He's like, oh, we're about to go on strike. So what I'm almost thinking that if I were him, and I don't know if he's already tried it or not, go to Warner Brothers Discovery and say, I've got these scripts done. Like, do you guys want to produce these? What content are you going to produce for the next year? How about you put that money towards this? But maybe he's on strike too. I don't know. So I don't know. It's just an idea.
Yeah, I don't know how he would want to, like, if that would be seen as going against the people on strike.
Right. That's true.
And there was a lot of, there was a lot of support there.
Yeah, good thing I'm not Zach.
Yeah.
So another thing here, this was my favorite part of it, is at this event, this was during the night of Batman v Superman. You can watch it on YouTube now, and I'm about to upload an audio leveled version of it. A fan asked Zack Snyder if Jeff Johns' Doomsday Clock would be adapted into future films, to which he responded with a simple, probably not. But shortly after that, stunt coordinator Damon Caro and visual effects supervisor John DJ Desjardins strongly reacted to Jeff's name, tossing their mics and walking away before sitting back down, Damon adding, "We don't talk about that guy."
It's kind of like a Snyderverse related question, but I saw Watchmen, I loved it. Casting was perfect. Casting for Justice League, Batman for Superman, perfect. I don't know if you're familiar with Doomsday Clock, but I was wondering if that was in your vision or if what you think of it, and was that ever gonna come to fruition eventually in the future?
Which one was Doomsday Clock?
It was the crossover between Watchmen characters.
Yeah,
and,
was that the
DC.
Jeff Johns?
Yeah, Jeff
comic?
Johns. Yeah.
Yeah, probably not.
DJ.
Like
We
I
don't
said,
talk about that
like
guy.
I said, probably not.
So that was from what I know, the only time that people can correct me, but that any crew member that's not, I mean, Ray Fisher, I know he's been vocal about it, but being that close to Zach saying, screw that guy, basically. Zach, of course, he's always been real good about his temperament or being, keeping the class up. So for him, he's just like, probably not. But for his friends, they're like, I don't give a shit. I'll speak for you. Fuck that guy.
Sometimes you gotta say what you gotta say. I don't even know why they were asking about whether Doomsday Clock would be adapted. I mean, I get that, Snyder did the original Watchmen adaptation, but it's like, yeah, if Jeff Johns' name's attached to Doomsday Clock, well, of course he's not going to. Like, why would you ask him that? You're just feeding the fire at that.
Yeah.
And trying to get a rise out of him, I think, with that question.
Zach's been pretty good about, from so far, these movies, avoiding content that would pay out Jeff Johns, I think, and royalties or whatever. I know a lot of people talk about Flashpoint and how that was going to be one of the movies, but that was written by Jeff Johns. And I think that Zach would have changed or altered the plot to make it different from Flashpoint or make something better. Actually, that's exactly what he said on Vero. They were like, were you planning on doing Flashpoint? And he said something even better. So that would have avoided paying out Jeff Johns. And I know people were saying, Grail, she was going to be in the movie. And it's like, that's a Jeff Johns creation, though. I don't think he would put her in there either. There's a lot of things like that he is clearly not wanting to work with the man, reference a lot of his work. I know some people on Facebook were like, his movies are based on the New 52 Justice League versus Darkseid fight. It's like, they're not. They're very different. I mean, you watch the movies, especially the Nightmare World, nothing like Jeff's thing. If anything, it's more like Straczynski, some of the other comic writers. The guy, man, his name escapes me right now. Grant Morrison. He loves Grant Morrison. So there's a lot of other writers that he's pulling from that are not Jeff Johns. Now, that question I sort of understand, right? You were saying he directed The Watchmen. There's Easter eggs in BVS of "The End Is Nigh" written on billboards. There's a flash of lightning on a wall when Batman is beating up Superman, and it says, "Who watches the Watchmen?" I think it's in French or something, a different language. So it's like, oh shit, are these just Easter eggs, or are the Watchmen now in the DC universe? So my question on Vero wasn't about Doomsday Clock, and I wish this person had asked instead, were your plans to later on cross over Watchmen into the DC universe? That's the question I would have wanted. And the only reason is because I'm curious if Jeff took that idea from Zach. Like if Zach vocalized it at some point, or Jeff found out about it and wrote it into the comics. He's like, that's a great idea. I'm going to put it in there. I don't know. I think that's a possibility. But again, Zach's too nice of a guy where he won't say it, unless directly asked. And I wish they had asked him.
Yeah, at least that question would have made a lot more sense. And it would have also made a lot more sense for him to cross over his Watchmen with his DC universe.
Yeah, and it would have been a different story than Doomsday Clock for sure.
Yeah.
This last one, I got a lot of shit on Twitter. A lot of people got it. There was some heat behind this one. Zach and John and the crew, it was shown that they had initial plans to tie the Amazonians or Amazon's origin to Superman and Krypton by turning the gods, particularly Zeus and Ares, into Kryptonians. So the story is that they would have always been Kryptonians. It's not that they would have later on changed them into Kryptonians. So this idea was developed as the filmmakers tried to ground the superhero stories as much as possible and make sense of magic and godly powers. So the concept of traditional gods was otherwise explored in Snyder's version of Justice League, which gave Darkseid and the new gods a more significant role than the theatrical release. And just to be clear, because everyone thought that Zach was explaining this after the fact. Like, oh, they are actually Kryptonians. It's like, no, that's not what he was saying. He was saying that when they were developing these plans, their explanation for Zeus and Ares and the rest of the gods is that they're in that ship that's shown in Man of Steel that crashed 20,000 years ago before Superman lands, and that these ancient Kryptonians were like ancient aliens, right? They were gods to these people, and that they helped fight Darkseid off the first time, back when he was Uxas. So they called them gods, but they were Kryptonians the whole time, and it would look as if they had powers because they'd be flying around and using their heat vision, all that stuff. So that's how they were going to explain that. He revealed that the original plan was that one of those Kryptonians that would have been named Zeus or would have been the Zeus character is the one who would have started the Amazon. So by him having kids with human women, they would have been half Kryptonian. Therefore, that's why they're as strong as they are. That explains how the Amazons have their powers. Hence, Wonder Woman being part Kryptonian. That's what would have all been the story. And a lot of people ask, well, why is he grounding it? They forget that this was all spun out of the Dark Knight trilogy. This was all out of the Nolan universe. So at first, Man of Steel was supposed to be a Dark Knight trilogy tie-in. And when Christian Bale decided he didn't want to come back to the role, that's when in Batman v Superman, they recast. So they had a Ben Affleck, and Zack did his own Batman. He's like, all right, cool. If we're not going to do the Christian Bale one, then we're going to move forward, and this is a new universe. So he's able to do his Batman, and he went with Dark Knight Returns. So I feel like a lot of people missed that point. They went straight to he's explaining after the fact when that's not even the fact right now. At this point in the Snyder Cut, they're literal gods and they're magic and whatever. So it's just kind of funny that people got so upset by that. Yet in the Marvel universe, they did the same thing. Thor and all his friends are aliens. They're not gods, but that's okay because it's not Zack Snyder.
I get it if you're, with trying to ground it, like that would make more sense that these aliens were just worshipped as gods. Kind of wish it would have been a different alien race, like that it was just a separate one than Kryptonian, so that they weren't in some way related to Superman. But, I mean, hey, if the story had played out the way he had originally written it with it, maybe it would have been really good. We'll never know. Since, to your point, the one that exists now is that they're just literal gods.
And that's one of those things that
we didn't get to see, all of the different, the writing and story for it. And that would have been like, oh, maybe that would change my mind. Or, maybe, oh, okay. Yeah, I see. Because I get what he's going for if he's going for the more grounded approach. Like, yes, that makes more sense than just, oh, well, suddenly people had magic, or suddenly these gods existed. And it's like, no, he's going for, yeah, they were so powerful, they were just worshipped as gods.
And it's exactly your point where people hear the idea, they feel the premise or whatever, and they judge it on that. But if, let's say, the Snyder Cut had never released, and he would have said at this Q&A, well, originally it wasn't Steppenwolf that was, and he did say this before the cut came out, of like, it wasn't Steppenwolf, it was Darkseid, it was Uxas. And he was the one who first invaded Earth, and the gods had to push him back. The old Justice League, the old gods, whatever you want to call it. And now they have to do it again, but this time Darkseid is stronger. So that's what happened in that universe. And even back then, people were like, that's a terrible fucking idea, and then the cut came out, and lo and behold, people loved it. So it's just kind of funny that people forget that until you see that idea executed, everything sounds wild. But when you watch it, it's like, okay, how did they pull off the magic trick?
Yeah, it's one of those like, oh, okay, let's see. If it was fully completed and you didn't like it at that point, well, all right then. But you'll never know if it was actually well done or not, because it didn't happen. Like, you never got the chance to do it with that. They decided against it for one reason or another.
I do have the full Q&As up on our YouTube channel. There's an audio version. There's also a video version now. And again, because the audio was terrible for me, at least, just from, maybe it's because I'm a podcaster, I don't know. But as I was trying to watch the event live every night, I was like, I can barely hear. Some of the mics are lower, some of them are higher, some are yelling, and I can't hear the audience members, all that stuff. So I ended up pulling the video, running it through what I run the podcast through, and doing like an overly edited version where I cut out all the silence from the kind of like I do on the show. And then I did a more raw version where you can actually see the actors, but the audio is leveled. So if you go to our YouTube channel, head on over to thereasonsimbroke.com, go all the way to the bottom, and there's a link to our YouTube, and you will find the audio version, the video version, but all of it sounds even. So you can hear everyone's questions, you can hear everyone's responses, you can hear a bunch of the extra information that Zack gave us. But at least for now, these are the big hits. Circling back around to why I'm not giving up on this is, one, the fact that Zack wouldn't reveal a lot of stuff still. Like, well, that's even Ben Affleck. Ben was there on the last day, and they were like, what was the plan for your Batman film? And he's like, well, I don't really want to get into it too much. Or he was like, I forgot some parts. So he would say stuff like that we're like, okay, they're not revealing for a reason, So whatever that reason is, good or bad, whatever, they're not revealing it. And one thing that he did say is the Green Lantern scene, because everyone expected him to throw it up on the final night, is okay. Now we're going to get the emerald cut of it, right, where we see Jon Stewart at the end. Zach did answer that one, and he said that that's Warner Brothers' property, so it's out of his hands. Yeah, he has a copy, but he can't show it. So that was one of those things that it breaks copyright or NDA or whatever it is. And Zach's not been shy about that in the past, but that's like a whole scene that he didn't want to throw up at this event. So that he said we may never see, or we won't see for a while. So that's one I'm kind of giving up on for a bit. But the last thing that I want to say about this is, before the event, they were asking him about the poster. Why is the Superman statue restored? Why is it put back together? We saw it destroyed by Doomsday in BVS, and it's got all the cracks in it. It's put together. And he was like, when the time comes, I'll reveal that. And he's like, it'll be after the event. And then the event came, and I thought it was going to be at the event. I'm like, Zach, you're a terrible liar. It's restored. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. And it didn't happen. So now I'm like, okay, well, that's the one thing I'm holding out for, is that he's saying that he will explain those Easter eggs or those reasons at a later time. So I'm holding out for later this year. I don't know how the writer's strike is affecting things, and if it is going to delay such an announcement, which is a possibility. But the fact that he gave me that beforehand, and I know that Millennial Mike has said on the show, like, it's unfair. like he's not happy with Zach right now. Millennial Mike's a Zach fan, and he's not happy, and I totally understand why. Totally get it, but I'm not to that point yet because of what he said. So I'll wait until he explains that poster. And if we get nothing else outside of that, then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to back off. But until that happens, I mean, he gave me enough hope, so I'm still in it.
Can't give up until I guess it's actually fully over. Until
he says it, right? And that's what Millennial Mike wants.
Until he says it, or until like the signs are just all at that point, like, this isn't happening.
Right, that's true.
Like, there's been too much radio silence. There's been too much just nothing.
That'd be the time right there. But there you have it. That's the full circle coverage. I put up posts about it, talked about it on here. But let me know on your end if this full circle event gave you closure, if it gave you more hope, which of these things gave you like, oh shit, they should have done that, like the Kryptonian thing, or learning about Robin, how he was blown up or scorched up. We don't know more details about that. No Jeff Johns. I love that. For that alone, it was worth it. Just for like the big middle finger to Jeff Johns. Like, that was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And of course, it was for charity. I'm still waiting for my shirts to come in, but it all went to a great cause. So it was already worth it. Even if it saved one life, made it all worth it. So thank you if you donated. Thank you if you talked about Full Circle, if you promoted it online. And the t-shirts are still available as drawn by Jim Lee. So if you go to Ink to the People, search up Zack Snyder, search up Full Circle, whatever, it'll pop up. And you can get a t-shirt still. But that does wrap up our news for this week. Let's head into the final portion of today's show, which is the Brokept Block, what Scott and I have been up to since you last heard us. What's been happening on your end? What are you preparing for? What's been making you broke?
We've been doing a video game club over on Lazy Gaming Guys. It's kind of like a book club, except we're playing through a video game and then discussing it as you would with a book club. And that's been pretty fun. We're currently doing Final Fantasy II. And that one is a lot more surprising than I thought it was going to be. I'm actually having a lot of fun playing through Final Fantasy II for the Pixel Remaster. I haven't played through most of the Final Fantasy series. I got into Final Fantasy very, very late in its lifespan.
Was it 7? No, 10, right?
10 was my 10 was my first real one that I played. I had Final Fantasy 3 or Final Fantasy 6 back on the Super Nintendo. I got it for free from my uncle, but it wasn't something I really played much past like the intro. 10 was the first one I really sat down and spent a lot of time with and played and enjoyed. So it's been fun going back to some of the older ones, thanks to the Pixel Remaster being out on almost every platform. The only thing it is not out for is the Xbox.
That's like a Square Enix thing, isn't it?
But yeah, it's on PC, so you can still play it on
Okay. Cool.
your computer through Steam. But yeah,
Did you end up getting the physical version or the digital?
the physical has been sold out for the last year and a half.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you got on it early.
So yeah, no, I didn't at the time, so I have it purely digital. The physical versions go for ridiculous amounts now. If Square Enix ever restocks their own supply, I will try and pick up a physical copy. As of right now, I'm like, no, I'm good.
So what's the gimmick with this collection? Did they redo all of them in modern pixelization, or is it like?
So yeah, they all look a lot nicer. They have quality of life improvements.
Oh, good.
So for instance, like you can quick save in dungeons so that, instead of like, nope, you can only save on the overworld and then you die in a dungeon, you restart everything. They added things like you can boost experience by 4 times. You can turn encounters off. You can boost the amount of gold you receive after battles.
Oh, nice.
Things like that so that you can kind of,
Easy mode.
adjust difficulty or, be like, nah, I got other things to do. Like sometimes I'll turn off random battles because I'm like, I'm already overpowered. I grind in general. It's like, all right, I got better things to do. But at the same time, it's nice that they have those kind of gameplay features. And then, of course, trophy or cheapen support is another big thing. But yeah, they rebalanced a lot of stuff and then made it look a lot nicer. And then redid the soundtracks to make them sound better. So you're not necessarily hearing like the old 8-bit sounds unless you want to. That is also available on there just as an audio option.
Yeah, I was tempted on getting this collection, even though I'm not a Final Fantasy guy, but I'm a sucker for that stuff, man. Anytime they remaster something and then bundle it up. What is this thing, like $40? Is it cheaper too?
It is $75.
Oh shit. Well, fuck, man, I'll wait.
Final Fantasy, it is Final Fantasy 1 through 6.
Normally I'd expect that stuff to be like $50 or $40. They really went all out.
They're $12 each or $75 for all.
Gotcha. Well, since it's sold out physically, I guess they can. Yeah, there's no reason for them to bring down that price.
They know the demand there.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
and I'm sure it won't be on sale anytime soon because they know the demand's there.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe I'll wait out then. Wait a couple
or
years.
you can just slowly piece them out,
True.
If you really want to, you can just be like, oh, well, this is the one I wanted to play the most. Let me just pay this $12. And then, a year later, be like, oh, I'll spend another $12. I was not expecting the $75 price tag for all of them. I mean, it is still cheaper than buying them all separately, but not by a whole lot.
Sure.
But that has been fun. I love the Final Fantasy series, so it's nice playing. These are what I would consider the definitive versions of the older ones. So very fun, very enjoyable.
Will you be streaming any of it?
Potentially. I haven't been able to stream Final Fantasy 2 because we had to have certain stopping points and stuff for the game club, and we also couldn't reveal like our thoughts on it until we got together to do the discussion, which was Wednesday's stream. This last Wednesday's stream was our first one, and then later in May will be our one for having beaten the game. So I didn't want to stream it and then end up talking about my stuff from it at that point.
Right.
But so far with the other Final Fantasies, we aren't doing that. So I might stream some of the other ones, like 1, 3, maybe 4 or 5.
All right.
Something like that. That's been most of what I've been doing for that. And then I've been getting ready because I'm going on vacation.
Nice.
So that'll be fun. Go on a nice little cruise.
Very cool. Which countries is it hitting?
Let's say Jamaica, Cozumel, Mexico.
Yes.
Grand Cayman.
Cozumel, I don't know if you ever go to port, but there's a great supermarket store at that port. Man, I'm trying to remember the call. It's the only big supermarket there because everything else is like a gift shop. But
yeah,
that's where I stock up on like toothpaste and soap and everything because it's cheaper down there. They take dollars, they take regular cash, and yeah, man, it's and they have candy there. They have stuff there that you can't get here. So if you get the chance, if you go out to port, try to hit up that supermarket because it's got some fun stuff in it.
Yeah, I'll try. I know last time I went, I got like some sodas and stuff like that to try. Like they had a Fanta that wasn't available in the US. That was terrible. It was like super, super sweet. I also thought about trying to find like a card game shop nearby.
Oh yeah, I don't know about that one.
See if there is one. So I got to look on Google Maps before I go just to kind of see. But I'm curious because I forgot what report it was one time I found a used game shop, but their prices were completely ridiculous because of the island nature. It was one of the islands, and because everything has to be imported in so heavily, it was so expensive. Like just their normal games, brand new, that we would be buying for $60 were 80 and 90.
Oh,
because
wow.
of that. So it was like, okay, no thanks. I can buy that back in the US. But yeah, so I'm excited. I also picked up an EverDrive for my Game Boy Advance. I'm
Oh, is that
excited
like,
to try and get that
like an
working.
emulation thing or?
Yeah. So you can download an emulator and ROMs to it, and then actually plug in the cartridge into your GBA and play it like a normal Game Boy Advance game.
Oh, shit.
So that way you're actually using emulators on real hardware.
Yeah, no, you got to tell me more about that later on because I've seen on Instagram people sell these like straight up hardwares that are like Game Boys or Switches, and they have like beautiful screens on them and everything, but they're like, yeah, they're not for emulation, but they'll like say, but you can put anything on it. So that's what people use to put a bunch of like thousands of titles into one, like to put it on an SD card, throw it in there. But if you're saying an EverDrive can basically do the same thing, it's probably I'm guessing that thing's less than $200, right?
Yeah, not a ton less.
Oh, okay.
It's about 128.
Gotcha.
It should work. I haven't been able to get a chance to get it working yet. I had to go out and buy a reader and writer for SD cards so that I can actually put the ROMs on the SD card, since you also have to reformat the SD card as well. But my EverDrive arrived today, and I picked up that reader before recording. So hopefully tomorrow I can get that all figured out, and that'll be really cool to just be able to like, yeah, I have a couple hundred games on my Game Boy Advance, and I can just pull out my Game Boy Advance SP wherever I go. Like I can bring on road trips, conventions and stuff. And it's like, yeah, I've got a whole Game Boy Advance library on there.
Yeah, that's badass,
So
man. Especially like for kids too. Like if you have a kid, it's like, here you go.
I was trying to find one for DS so bad, but
oh man,
they don't have an EverDrive for it, and the flash carts that are available are very hit or miss from what I was reading on reviews. Some are decent and some are just absolute crap. But EverDrive is like a pretty trusted brand in flash carts. They don't have an N64 one as well. I'm picking up.
And you use it on your regular N64?
Yep. It's just a cartridge. You put in the SD card and then you just plug it into the N64, turn it on, navigate the menus to start up the ROMs, and you're good to go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool since you can play anything just on actual hardware instead of just having to play the ROM on your computer.
No, you'll have to show me that when it's all done. I got to see that, man. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I know I was affected by something this week, and he was a part of your childhood, I'm guessing too, is the death of Jerry Springer. Like my wife and I were talking about this, and we're like, yeah, anytime I was sick from school, I'd be watching Jerry Springer. I'd be watching The People's Court. I'd be watching Cops, like all this stuff. And Jerry Springer was a big part of it.
Price is Right.
The Price is Right. Yeah.
Bob Parker.
Yeah, man. He was a part of that lineup of my childhood, which is so wild to say because that could only happen in a non-streaming world. I mean, if Leo is homesick, he throws up Netflix or HBO Max and he puts on Batman or he puts on his Shaun the Sheep or whatever. And back in our day, though, it's like, well, I'm going to watch TV, so it's going to be whatever's on. Oh, that looks hilarious. People are fighting. Or, whoa, women are flashing Jerry Springer, like things like that. So it's like,
yeah,
man, I don't know, man. I used to I wouldn't watch Jerry Springer outside of that. Like it was always when I was home and sick or whatever, but it was like, all right, man, it's entertaining. It's a part of it. The guy did, made a life out of it.
Yeah. Daytime television was not super great. So you had to make do with what you had. And that was one of the ones that was on that was like, yeah, this is somewhat entertaining.
Let's bring out the real father, like shit like that. Like, oh my God. I love how like it started off as like a legitimate show. And then as soon as they got crazy, they're like, oh, this is crazy ratings. We're just going to keep doing crazy fake episodes.
Yeah, I know Jerry Springer himself was on record of being like, I don't know why people watch this show, but they do.
That's amazing.
Like, you know, like that was in an interview. He's just like, I don't get it, but you know what? It pays the bill.
I love that he always had the Jerry's final thought at the end, which never fit like the whole format. Like everything else was wacky and crazy. And then it would all settle down for Jerry's final thought. And I don't know if he wrote it himself, but it's like, all right, here's the moral of today of what you just watched. It's like, oh, thanks.
Thanks, Corey.
It's educational too, I guess.
Yeah. Always use a condom.
That should have been the final thought every time. Maury, I got to give a shout out to as well, because he's retired now, but that was another one that I always used to watch, man. Like, you are not the father. And the guy would be dancing on stage, doing backflips. The girl always runs backstage, like, upset. And
Yeah,
that shit was
following her. and everything.
always cracked me up, because Maury was always sympathetic. I get why, but like to the mom, it's like, oh, it's okay. We're going to find you the real dad. Even after this was like their 6th time on the show. But whenever it was like, and the audience would be like booing the dad or whatever, or they'd be cheering him. That was also my favorite too, is when he'd be like, he doesn't look anything like me. That's clearly not my kid. And then the audience would boo him, and the mom would be like, oh, he's got your nose, he's got your eyes, he's got your hair. And then the DNA test would come out, and it'd be like, you're not the father. And then suddenly the audience would be clapping. It's like, you guys were just booing this guy. Like, suddenly you switch.
Yeah, they're not a very consistent audience there.
Not at all. They just go with whatever's the truth. Guy fucking dancing and shit. Like, I love it, man. But I had to bring that up. And obviously I'm still getting over this cold. I don't have any sick days at work. So I'm going in. That's kind of it. I picked up some stuff from Cool Stuff, some singles, Pokemon. Check it out on the YouTube channel. I did like a 2.5-minute video on there. I did something different this time. No commentary, just background music, and showcase just the artwork of the cards, just to kind of really showcase them without me blabbering on over them. So let me know if you thought that was better or worse. I tried to do a good job in showing like the hollow, the texture, all that stuff on the cards. So that's once again on our YouTube channel. But Scott, I want to thank you for being able to come on. I know you had some problems in your neighborhood as far as power, it sounds like, but things worked out, and you were able to give the Brokehead Core a show. So thank you. And please let them know what else you do and where they can find you.
So you can find me on the Lazy Gaming Guys every Wednesday at about 10 Eastern time on YouTube. And that's at Lazy Gaming Guys. The Twitter account, if you go on there, has like all the links and stuff like that as well. And then you can find me on the Discord for Lazy Gaming Guys, the Exiles Network, Reasons I'm Broke, multiple Discords. And then you can also find me on the Ronin Council podcast, which you can find through the Exiles Network on SoundCloud. There I do an anime podcast. It's pretty cool. We just recorded literally 2 days ago. This week has been a busy week for recording podcasts.
Nice.
But that'll be out soon. We're also testing out some new stuff with that. So that one's a little more evolving currently. We haven't fully settled into a real routine with it yet, but look forward to more from that.
All right. And you can find links to everywhere you can find Scott in the description of today's episode. Otherwise, if you want to talk to all of us, the hosts and other brokettes, head on over to our Discord channel. The link is at thereasonsimbroke.com. Scroll all the way at the bottom. You'll find the link. You can also find the link to our Discord in the description of today's show. We've got a really cool collector's corner, which was Bobby's idea of a lot of us share our TCG singles, our CGC comic books. Like John shares a lot of those. You and I share some of those too, CGC cards even, or regular pickups. If you're going to your comic shop for New Comic Book Day, hey, I'm reading this, check it out, or check out this cool variant I picked up. Share it on our Collector's Corner, and we would appreciate it. But thank you so much for joining us this week. I've been Daniel, joined by Scott, and Brokehead Core. All will be well. Is there another Pixel remaster that you would want to see come out of it, or maybe even a regular RPG that then gets put into pixels, like Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, moving forward, something like that?
As far as pixels go, like I'd like them to stay more in the past. Like I enjoy playing them more that they were already retro, not newer ones.
Product of its time.
As far as a pixel remaster I'd like to see, I don't know, like I would say the Dragon Quest series, but that's already been done. Like they've already remastered the first 3 Dragon Quests.
Yeah, even Pokemon they've remade several times.
Although I wouldn't mind like a more updated version of the original Red and Blue, since the last time we got them was Fire Red Leaf Green from GBA. So it'd be kind of nice to have a newer version that would connect a little easier to Scarlet and Violet and stuff like that.
I would even love the pixels to
It
come
seems
back
like
in
they're redoing
Pokemon
it.
because I always loved the pixel art they did. And I know that the creators were like, yeah, we got as good as we could get with pixels without going to 3D. And so we went to 3D. And I'm like, no, that's when like you were good then. You peaked. Like leave it there. You're at the top.
Yeah,
I miss the pixels.
Their pixel art in Pokemon has always been like very, very high quality. Like those old games, it looks really cool. You know, all the Pokemon still looked very unique and very interesting with what they could do, even in the original Red and Blue. So I think that they're probably one of the higher quality pixel artists that can be said for about that time. Although I wouldn't mind like a full remake of the original Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2, like where it kind of had some quality of life improvements.
They definitely need that, like especially Zelda 2.
Yeah. I think those could be really cool if you just gave them like a little bit of modern treatment, but kept a lot of it, kind of smoothed it out and made it look a little nicer.
Hope Nintendo's not listening because then they'd be like, oh, we thought of that. You just stole it from us. Lawyers.
Yeah.
We're shut down. Shutting down reasons I'm broke, running console, lazy gaming guys. You're done. Oh, man. And you owe us 25% of your income. They got us. We're not surprised, though. We're like, oh, man. It's like we landed on the go to jail on
It was-
Monopoly. Like, oh.
It was good while it lasted.